Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Alright, so here we go again, another round of hysteria. I log on Twitter this morning, and every single leftoid is doing their best Chicken Little impression. The sky is falling. Here we go again. The orange thread of fascism has never been so grave. It's the end of democracy as we know it. Elections are finished, blah blah frickin' blah. I've heard it all a million times before. It's once again one of those situations where it's the boy who cried wolf. Okay, what happened? The Supreme Court made a decision on presidential immunity, and supposedly it's the end of the world? Yeah, I think I'm gonna take this Democrat narrative with a grain of salt and look into the details for myself, and what do you know? It looks like once again the Democrat fearmongers are completely full of shit. Just like they were back in 2020 after the Roe v. Wade decision. The Supreme Court decides that the issue should be pushed back to the state, which honestly makes a whole lot of sense regardless of what your position is. From a democratic standpoint, California should not be able to impose its standards and its beliefs on a state like Alabama, for instance. The issue got pushed back to the states, but the Democrat reaction, I mean, you would think it was the end of the world as we knew it. As if Republicans had enacted a federal abortion ban with no limits, or with no exceptions rather. It's the exact same situation. Let's have a conversation about it. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so let's first start off with the story. Donald Trump immunity case. Supreme Court rules ex-presidents have substantial protections from prosecution. The Supreme Court ruled on Monday in Trump v. United States that a former president has substantial immunity from prosecution for official acts committed while in office, but not for unofficial acts. In a 6-3 decision, the court sent the matter back down to the lower court, as the justices did not apply the ruling to whether or not former President Trump is immune from prosecution regarding his actions relating to the efforts of overturning the results of the 2020 election. The president enjoys no immunity for his unofficial acts, and not everything the president does is official, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the majority. The president is not above the law, but Congress may not criminalize the president's conduct in carrying out the responsibilities of the executive branch under the Constitution, and the system of separated powers designed by the framers has always demanded an energetic, independent executive, he said. The president therefore may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers, and he is entitled at a minimum to a presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. That immunity applies equally to all occupants of the Oval Office, regardless of politics, policy, or party, he continued. So that right there is basically the overview of today's decision. Does that seem like something to panic over, or is that the expected result of this decision? It's the expected result. From my view, this should already be the accepted standard. Yeah, you probably shouldn't be able to prosecute former presidents over their official acts under the Constitution. What's so crazy about that? Even some of Trump's most vocal critics are defending him publicly. Here's Bill Barr on Fox News.
To have you.
Good to see you, Neil.
Let me ask you first off about what this case comes down to. That Donald Trump has absolute immunity from criminal prosecution, but only for official acts. Is it going to be up to a lower court then to determine the difference?
That's right. I think this was a very sensible decision that I think most lawyers familiar with this area expected, which is this went up to the court in a very abstract posture, which was the government's very broad assertion there was no immunity whatsoever. What the court's saying here is no, there's absolute immunity when he's acting directly under the Constitution, carrying out a function under the Constitution. There is presumptive immunity when he performs an official act, and the government has the burden of showing that it can prosecute him for that without impairing the executive function. And finally, there's no immunity for unofficial or private acts. And I think the practical effect of this is that the district court is going to do what it really should have done at the beginning, which the government really should have had it do, which is do the analysis so the facts are going up to the Supreme Court. So as a practical matter, there's not going to be a trial of this case before the election.
So I guess it comes back to that difference between official and private conduct. What's to stop the president, former or otherwise, from saying everything I do is an official act?
Well, because the test and the dissent by Justice Sotomayor, I think, unfairly portrays the majority opinion. The question is, what's the function being performed? What's the authority being used? Not what instrument is being used. So, for example, the president can direct that a case be dropped, and that's part of his constitutional authority. But he cannot accept a bribe to do that, because that's receiving a bribe. He doesn't have authority to receive a bribe.
There's nothing crazy about this decision, and again, as reiterated there by Bill Barr, this is what legal experts were expecting the decision to be. It's really no surprise to most people, but if you pay attention at what's going on in left-wing circles, I mean, holy frickin' moly, it's a fascist overtake of the US government. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is threatening to impeach the Supreme Court.
She plans to file articles of impeachment, Judge. Here's the tweet. Throw it up on the screen. The Supreme Court has become consumed by a corruption crisis beyond its control, she writes. Today's ruling represents an assault on American democracy. Now it's up to Congress to defend our nation from this authoritarian capture, she writes. I intend on filing articles of impeachment upon our return.
Leftists across Twitter are freaking out, many of them making the argument that this now gives any president the authority to assassinate his political opponents.
And given that the hypotheticals over the course of these arguments, as you rightly pointed out, included things like, can the president assassinate a rival? I think we have to look at the Supreme Court's affirmative answer to that. Yes, you can. With as much seriousness as it deserves. I mean, this is a death squad ruling.
I think that Joe Biden should officially have Donald Trump killed off, and that would solve this problem of him being too stupid to run our country. Take the official stance and just shoot Donald Trump right there on 5th Street. The Supreme Court said you could.
Hey, if someone says, well, then Joe Biden could order SEAL Team 6 this morning to assassinate Donald Trump, and he would be immune by Donald Trump's arguments. It is pure, sheer authoritarianism and tyranny.
Straight to the nonsense fear-mongering once again. And you know, it's funny coming from these leftists, because they're the ones who constantly accuse us of not reading. You don't even read the bill. I read the bill. Well, in this case, leftoids, did you? Did you actually read the decision? Because if you did, and it's bringing you to the conclusion that you're coming to, well, you might just be a little bit crazy. You might need to seek some help.
Stop it. Get some help.
Stop it. Get some help. Peak frickin' clown world. The decision is very clear. It says that presidents should benefit from substantial immunity for their official acts under the Constitution. It's not saying that the president can do whatever the frick he wants and just assassinate his political opponents, stack the courts, arrest his opposition, completely overtake government. That's not what the decision said at all. It's simply legal precedent from my view. Leftoids are making the argument that Trump rigged the court and now he's got his minions doing his work. It's completely ridiculous. This decision honestly doesn't have much to do with Trump as an individual per se. It has everything to do with the office of the presidency. This Supreme Court decision applies to all presidents. It applies to the current president. You know, if you really think about it, considering that today shouldn't be a day of mourning for Democrats, it should be a day of celebration. If what you're saying is true, that the Supreme Court just legalized imprisoning or assassinating your political opponents, well then there you go. You guys have been trying to get Trump off the ballot, haven't you? You've been trying to put him in a prison cell so he can't run for office. Well, apparently now you could do it all officially by executive power using Joe Biden as your proxy. Go ahead. But obviously that's not what's going to happen, because that's not the implication of this decision. In fact, the details surrounding the decision haven't even been ironed out yet. It's going to move to a lower court. More legal deliberation is going to happen, and especially within the Trump trials. Well, if the Trump trials were to happen ahead of the election, one judge makes a determination, then it goes through different checks and balances. You could appeal the decision. It could even go back to the Supreme Court. There's all kinds of checks and balances within the system. This isn't blanket immunity for the president to go on a crime spree. It's a basic logical protection for presidents, and most importantly, previous presidents. It's the exact same thing that we've been saying. It doesn't make sense for a president to conduct his official duties. Let's bring up the example we always do, Barack Obama and his drone strike programs. Some of the things that Barack Obama did could be described as war crimes, but nobody's trying him as a war criminal now that he's a private citizen again. If the Supreme Court hadn't made this decision, well then you could imprison every former president that's currently living. Obviously that doesn't make sense. This decision protects Barack Obama, but leftoids are real angry. I wonder why that is. They aren't angry because democracy is at stake. They aren't angry because it's the wrong decision. They're angry because it benefits Trump politically, because this decision hurts Jack Smith's little January 6 case in D.C.
Supreme Court has just handed down its decision on presidential immunity. Again, it's a mixed bag decision. There's some presidential immunity. There's presidential immunity for official acts, not for unofficial acts. But the way that they've worded it, as we've been discussing at this table and with our guests, is that it does seem to lean heavily toward Donald Trump's arguments here that he can do what he wants to do as president of the United States.
That's the reality. These leftist tyrants are just angry that they won't be able to imprison their political opponent. All these people on Twitter are pretending as if this is a huge historic day where everything changes, but nothing changes. I'd argue it's just a confirmation of what's been understood in terms of presidential immunity, and really it's not like this decision really affects the January 6th case at all, considering that case won't get across the finish line before the election and Trump's about to be the 47th president of the United States. At least he's likely to become the president, where he's instantly going to pardon himself. Enough with the lies and enough with the theatrics. The Chicken Little Democrats strike again. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.